All right, it's officially time. We've been teasing this episode, getting all the boys back together for hot takes, bold predictions, where to place your bets, and what in the world is going to happen in 2025. Everybody say hello. It's a big episode.
Hello.
What is...
You are Locked On Blue Jays, your daily Toronto Blue Jays podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to Locked On Blue Jays. Thank you for making Locked On Blue Jays your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. But the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins, and we will be using FanDuel quite a lot in today's episode. A lot to get into today. Like I said, hot takes, bold predictions, bets of the year, Vlad, Bo situation, 2025. We're going to cover it all in today's big roundtable episode. Just before we get into it, you guys can find us on Twitter. Braden Fabio Wasco, Carter First 2, Skyler A. Peters, Dallon Wilton, and also on Instagram and TikTok at Locked On Blue Jays. If you guys haven't already, make sure you hit the subscribe button. If you're listening anywhere else, head over to the YouTube page, hit that sub button. Helps us grow. Keeps us at the top of your guys' page for live streams, shorts, podcasts, videos, the whole ordeal. Discord link is down in the description. And Sunday, we are kicking off the Locked On Blue Jays Fantasy League, whereas I think we have a Friends one that goes on Tuesday, I believe. So we got a couple drafts happening in the next few days. If you guys want to tune in, we might do a little bit of, we might touch on some fantasy stuff in this episode, maybe on Tuesday. We'll get into it all. Skyler Peters, Dallon Wilton, boys, how's it going? How does it feel to be back on Locked On Blue Jays?
I just want to congratulate Dallon Wilton on his signing with the Braves, because right now he looks like he's one big chain away from Alex Verdugo. So Yankees version, no mustache. I see we're 3-1 on the Dusters to start the season, boys, but depending on how this goes, facial haircuts might have to change if this gets south in a hurry. But great to be back, and Dallon, good to see you, buddy.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me on. It's been a while, so I'm excited to, chum it up with you boys again.
You know what? I just want to address something quick off the top. So, like in the intro, he throws it over, like, "Oh, welcome back, boys," and then just all of a sudden, just cuts it straight into our intro. It's like asking, like, "Hey, how's it going?" And he goes into his own stuff, like, I'm going to go on my own day." Like, just throwing the boys under the bus to start it off. That's just typical Brady Nowasco.
Listen, I'm so ready for me and Carter to be snapping it back and forth, and then Skyler Peters jumps in with I don't know if it was going to be a question or what it was going to be. Dal's coughing into the mic. I don't know what's happening here.
Well, you only have us on, once every 3 months. Like, we're kind of rusty. Like, you get us in a regular rotation, this thing would be clicking. But it's been a while, boys. But it's about that time. I'm fired up. When I stepped in the booth, and I finally felt like baseball season was here. Even though I've been sitting on the couch watching some spring training, this is the real deal, boys. I'm fired up.
It really is. Carter, just a couple things before we really jump into the episode. A couple roster moves did happen before we really kick things off. This is a big episode. It's going to be a lot of fun. Make sure you guys stick around. Just some players being sent down to the system. These players have been reassigned to a minor league camp. That's Mason Flaherty, Kevin Gowdy, Hayden Younger, Matt Watley, and to the AAA system, Jake Bloss, Jonathan Clase, Aurelvis Martinez, Dylan Tate, and Josh Walker. So all those players have been reassigned or sent down. So that's how we kick off the year. But boys, I think the big topic, let's just talk about it. We didn't get your guys' opinions yet. Let's get right into it. Vladimir Guerrero Jr., no extension. Bichette, no extension. You know what, Skyler, let's start with you. How do you feel? Like, what are first thoughts, first time back on the podcast since everything sort of went down? What are you feeling?
I don't really know what to feel, and I don't think we're gonna know until we get some certainty on this whole thing. Like, I actually thought we being the Blue Jays, as a Blue Jays fan, I thought that the team had a pretty good offseason. But I felt like for it to be like an A+ offseason, or an A probably in a lot of people's eyes, if you're to give it a letter grade, like it needed to include one of those signings. But in terms of constructing the roster for this year, addressing last year's deficiencies, that sort of thing, I think they did a pretty good job. So, while I'm optimistic for this season and at least the start of it, obviously that's going to hang over the head of all Blue Jays fans for a long time. And every time you go on the road, the opposing media is going to be interviewing these guys, or trying to, and it's going to hang over this team, which is really unfortunate. I wish we could just focus on baseball, but that's just not the reality that we've set ourselves up, and it's probably a couple of years in the making. With the 2021 talks with Vladdy, and with Bo's injuries over the last couple of years. But so it's an unfortunate, it's a weird situation. It should be interesting though. It'll give the boys lots to talk about.
Yeah, I'll comment on that too. I mean, they're in on Soto and they don't end up getting him. You think that their next priority would be to lock up Vladdy. I mean, they're going out. They're willing to spend this kind of money on a guy who's not even homegrown like Vladdy is. And now $3 million off or something from a contract getting done? It's like, can you not go out and spend that extra $3 million? You've got this guy since he was 16 years old, and you've raised him in your system, and now you don't want to keep him, it seems like. So it's frustrating for that to see. And also, back to the media comment there, Vladdy doesn't want to talk about all that stuff, but interviewers are always in the space, reporters and stuff. You wonder if that's going to be a distraction for him in the upcoming year here too. So I don't know how it's going to play out. It's frustrating that they don't get a deal done with either of them. I mean, the one with Bo is a bit iffy. You don't know how I guess it's kind of depends on how his year goes, but to not lock up Vladdy, it's very frustrating.
Yeah,
I'll jump in here. It's been just a roller coaster of a ride with this Vladdy stuff. We've heard $600 million. We've heard 585 from David Ortiz. We've heard 340 earlier on this offseason. We've heard 500 million. It's kind of been all over the place, and it sucks even more when we've heard both sides discussion or just talking about it, having discussions about it. Where you have Ross Atkins in the front office saying, "Oh, we want this guy back. There is mutual interest." And you had Vladdy at the start of the offseason and beyond. You had him saying, "Oh, I want to come back to Toronto Blue Jays. Want to come back to the Jays." And now you're seeing all this stuff. I'm worth this amount of Juan Soto. I'm worth at least $600 million as a floor. I want to base my contract off of Juan Soto's. Again, we've seen a few reports from this. It's all up in the air, though. We haven't seen the same report come out a bunch of times. And I think that's the biggest issue, is that there is a lack of clarity on these contract discussions. But for both you guys here, is there a number or a length of contract? Like, it's 15 years for you, like, okay, that's way too long for Vladimir Guerrero Jr. Maybe like $585 million. Like, that's too much for Vladimir Guerrero Jr. Do you have any maximum contract that you guys would pay this guy? Or do you open the checkbook, leave it open for this guy, let him kind of determine his own value here in Toronto?
Yeah, I guess the one thing I'll say to Dallon's comments about, being just $3 million off per year, that the one thing we're missing there is we don't know how far the Blue Jays were maybe stretched from their initial offer. And to hear that you're maybe still $3 million off per year is kind of concerning for me, because, maybe they increased it by 1.5, 2-3 times as far as these negotiations went. I understand that, we need a player that is a homegrown talent, is going to put seats or butts in the seats in the ballpark and that sort of thing. But I mean, this is a team that, when you look at the financial situation right now, they're the only team in MLB, obviously, that makes their money in Canadian dollars and pays in US dollars. Our dollar is tanking right now. They just spent $500 million on the ballpark over the last couple of years. I understand the fiscal concerns. Maybe everybody needs to upgrade their cell phone packages and help the club out here, and we could maybe re-sign this guy by August. But my number, I had it written down here. I thought, and this is before the talks broke down, before that February 18th deadline, I said, let's go 14 years, 565. And if we got past that, let it ride, and we're in this situation right now. And I think the one thing that the Blue Jays probably tried to do this in their contract, just have it laden with opt-outs. After 5 years, if Vladdy feels that his value is higher, you still got 5 years of Vladdy, and you're going to be the team driving the bus to at least, try to re-sign him at that point, even though the number is going to be astronomical if he turns out, the way he hopes. I just thought that was really an option for this team. Maybe not locking this guy in for 12 years, but you're going to get, the best 5 of his career going into his age 26, 27 season. So it was really unfortunate it didn't get done, but I'd love to know. Maybe the book will be written in 20 years on how these negotiations went. But I'd love to know how far Vladdy and his agency were able to stretch that Blue Jays initial offer, to get to the point where they were about $45 million off in the total value.
Yeah. And Dal, just to jump in before I send it back to you, I had a conversation with somebody today, actually talking about just how all the negotiations went on. And he brought up the fact that does Vlad want to take a 14, 15, 20-year deal, whatever it was, that he would have taken the moon if you would have given it to him. But does he want to do that as a player? As a player right now, where you're seeing the value of money being sort of tossed out the window, these values are only going to continue to grow over the next how many years? Why would he not take a 8 or 10-year deal instead and then have the possibility to go and make even more money? But he could have made maybe 450 million over a 10 or a 12-year period, or 500 million over a 12-year period, instead of looking for that 14, 15 year. And I guess, or cut it down with the opt-outs is a great point. There's so many little things when it comes down to this. I think the frustrating thing is that we're not in the head of these players or the organization. And I don't understand what's holding this back at this point, besides the fact that maybe Vlad just wants to prove to everybody that he's worth Juan Soto money. That's about all I can say on this anymore. I'm past the point of, oh, well, if they would only get 2 or 3 more million a year, maybe they'd figure it out. I honestly sort of don't believe that. I think Vlad wants to prove to everybody that he is just as good as Juan Soto, or makes just as much money as Juan Soto. It's going back to what Carter said around the NFL, right? Always wanting to be the next guy that's making the most money. I don't know, Dal, what are you feeling?
Yeah, I mean, I'll keep it short. I talk to my grandma a lot. She's a huge Blue Jays fan, and we both believe that baseball players make way too much money. Like, it's crazy. And it sucks that guys like Ohtani and Soto, they're kind of setting the market so high. My optimal contract for Vladdy, I think 15 years is way too long for any ball player. I would say around 10 years. I'd go around the 500 million mark. But, in this situation, I think you got to do what you got to do to keep him around. So I would have given him that 15 year. I would say the max would be 600 million probably.
And Braden was right. There's so many little intricacies that can go into these contracts. There's deferrals, there's AAV, there's length of the contract, there's opt-outs. So there's so many little things that are going on. And clearly Vladdy thinks he's a good baseball player. Clearly we all think he's also a good baseball player. It's just, how good do we think Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is? Do we think he's up to the level of the Shohei Ohtanis, the Aaron Judges, the Juan Sotos? Or do we think he is just a very good baseball player, maybe more like the Trey Turners? Again, the guys that are really good still, but maybe not these franchise generational players. Where I'm at, my maximum contract is 12 years, $550 million. If you're going to pay him more than that, I think you let him prove it this year anyway. You're going to have to pay Vladimir Guerrero Jr. $550, $600 million. Let him have that consistency. Let him have another good year. If he hits 30 home runs, hits whatever, 330, I'm not as worried about average, more worried about the home runs, the RBIs, the OPS. You're going to have another good year like he did in 2024, like he did in 2021. At least you have more certainty on the player Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is. And yes, maybe that bumps up his market a little bit more, but then you have a little bit more confidence in the player that you're going to get. I think, against Braden's point, why you might not sign an 8 to 10 year contract. He signs a 10-year contract. He's 37 when he's re-entering free agency. At that point, is he still playing the same caliber of baseball? At that point, probably exclusively just to DH. Is there going to be money there for him at that point? I think it's just more of a risk if you're not locking yourself up for that long-term contract. Yes, it can pay off in the long term, but I think there's a lot more risk involved. Yes, rather sign that away. You get your 15 years. Obviously, you still want to play. You still want to be a good baseball player, but the incentive, especially near the end of his career, I feel like would drop off a little bit in that scenario.
Well, and the one thing I'll add real quick is you got to remember that Vlad does not really play a premium defensive position. And over the last couple of years, yeah, he has a gold glove somehow at first base, but he is not a premium defender. He's, average at best. You got to hit a lot of bombs to offset that for that amount of money, as opposed to a guy like Bo, who I'm sure we're going to talk about, who, plays basically the key cog in the infield, and, is a very important defensive player at the same time.
Yeah, and you know what? That's exactly where I wanted to go next. I guess before we take this break and really dive into the hot takes, bold predictions of it all, because I'm sure we're going to talk about these two players again when that comes up. But just a quick word here from each of you guys on Bo Bichette. A guy that just isn't being talked about. That contract not happening really isn't being talked about. And for me, it comes to a fact that they want to get Vladdy so then they can get Bo, because Bo is a little bit of the unknown. Will he stay if Vlad's not here? Maybe not. So maybe their thinking is if we get Vlad, we get Bo, and it's a 2-for-1. Where do you guys stand in the whole Bichette situation? Do you feel like he was sort of snubbed by the whole, being in the same class as Vladimir Guerrero Jr.?
Well, I think that was, it's probably created more by the media. It's also created by the fact that he played literally half the season last year in 81 games. If he had another season where he led the AL in hits, or he was, up in that conversation, he'd probably be having these two talks simultaneously. It's not like Mark Shapiro and Ross Atkins, just didn't talk to Bo this whole time. I'm sure they were doing two things at once. But I think the shortstop market's a lot harder to judge because you're seeing some of these guys sign these 9-10 year deals, but the value of the shortstop position is actually quite a bit lower. We've seen Bo's upside. I think the big question is his health. And I do feel like there's a realistic chance that Bo can come back to this team, even if Vlad's not on it in 2026. But I do think that hinges on this year even more than Vladdy's does, where it's more of a value pumper. I think, this team's maybe evaluating whether or not they want to give Bo Bichette that, lifetime contract to stay a Blue Jay.
Yeah, I think they're a bit frightened of last season. I think that might, keep them away from the big numbers. But ultimately, if Vladdy leaves, I think that their next priority will be locking up Bo. But then the question is if, like you said, if he wants to stay a Blue Jay, if Vladdy's not there, or if he doesn't see this team going in the right direction. But they also could be thinking about some guys they have in the pipeline, like Namala, other guys that could play the infield. Maybe they think they have a replacement down there somewhere coming in a few years. So I really hope they lock him up, and I hope he bounces back this year.
A lot of this is going to come down to how good the Toronto Blue Jays are in 2025. This team can have success. Winning solves a lot of problems. So it might solve a Vladdy contract problem, might solve a Bo Bichette problem. There's other guys, obviously, that are having the contracts up at the end of the season. Chris Bassitt's there. You got some bullpen arms, Swanson, Chad Green. So it is a massive season for the Toronto Blue Jays. A lot of big players on contract years. A season that if it doesn't go well, the Toronto Blue Jays could look a whole lot different in 2026. But saying that, we do have some bold predictions. We do have some predictions based off those contract years, who we think is going to do really well, who we think is going to take a step back, a bunch more that we want to get into. We're going to get into some more predictions coming up.
Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel, which we are about to go all in on. The boys are about to give their hot takes, their big bets of the season that they're going to be placing their money. March Madness is also here, and FanDuel is giving you a chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 extra bucks to use on anything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories, even who's cutting down the nets. I'm telling you guys, just sign my brother up for this. Be utilizing those bonus bets. So visit FanDuel.com and get in on the college hoops action all tournament long. Today's episode is also brought to you by GameTime. There's nothing better than catching an MLB game live. The crack of the bat, the roar of the crowd, and the smell of the ballpark food. And if you're looking to go last minute, GameTime makes getting tickets even easier. I'm telling you guys, every time I go to a sporting event, it's always through GameTime. They give you the best deals. They got their all-in pricing feature as well, which shows you exactly what you're going to pay. So there isn't a surprise when you head to the checkout. I know that was one of my biggest gripes when I use other ticketing apps was I think I'm paying something. I would get to the checkout and, it's $30 more. And it gives you the best seats in the house. It gives you the live view so you can actually see what your seat looks like. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with GameTime. Download the GameTime app. Create an account. Use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account. Redeem code LOCKEDON MLB for $20 off. Download GameTime today. Last minute tickets. Lowest prices guaranteed. All right, boys, it's time. This is the one we've been waiting for. I know this is the one I've been pumped up for. The hot takes, the bold predictions. And ladies and gentlemen, Skyler Peters' favorite segment, the FanDuel bets.
It is the longest section of my on my notes here. Like you guys left Dallon and I with a little gauntlet, but I make sure I'd spend some time on the best bets. The hot takes are truly hot, and they're coming off the top of my head. But the best bets there was some digging done.
Carter, where do you want them to start it off? Do you want it to go straight into the bets, or do you want? I think this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna take your guys' hot takes, and what I'm gonna do tomorrow or over the weekend is put them into a little Canva thing, and it'll be posted on the Locked On Blue Jays Instagram, so we have them for the entirety of the season. So I think we start with hot takes. We start right here, right now. Dallon Wilton, I'm throwing the first hot take to you. because I heard a couple of them. You gave me a little sneak peek, so why don't you kick things off?
Yeah, this one's a crazy one, but I think if the Blue Jays fix their bullpen and strengthen their bullpen, that not that they'll win the World Series, but they'll make it to the World Series.
First
Yeah,
reaction, Carter
those are-
first.
That's definitely starting out hot. I just want a little
That
bit
is
more
sizzling.
like clarity to that. Like, what do you mean? Like, how many additions do they need to make? Like, is it like that top of the end, like a Devin Williams, like that type of addition, or is it just get 3 middle leverage guys and that's like good enough? Like, send this team to the World Series.
No, I'd say you'd have to get obviously a top-notch guy, but then you could add 2 more depth arms, guys that are going to hold it for you late in the game, are going to shut it down for you. I think the biggest weakness of this team is the bullpen. So if they can strengthen that, then I think they're looking pretty good.
Skyler Peters.
Well, the one thing I will say, I feel like the Jays did address their bullpen fairly well in the offseason. It's part of why I was pretty bullish on the moves they did make. Obviously, bringing back Yimi Garcia, adding Jeff Hoffman is huge. Like, I feel like the high leverage guys are there. Maybe one lefty arm away. I think Nick Sandlin's going to be a big part of this bullpen too. Another new face in the Blue Jays back end. But my hottest take is that Bichette is going to be top 5 in AL MVP voting, and he is going to be higher than one Vladimir Guerrero Jr.
Wow.
I just don't think he is being talked about enough, and it is truly an issue of availability for Bichette. And I think, he played 160 games 2 of the last 3 seasons, and obviously last year was a disaster. I think he gets right back to that level if he's on the field every day. So hinging on health, I think Bo is the best player on the Toronto Blue Jays this year and one of the best players in the American League.
Holy, who wants to go after that one? Not that I hate that at all. Like I've always said, Bo Bichette is a top echelon player when he's at his best. It's just you don't always get Bo Bichette's best if it's injuries, if it is streakiness. But yeah, you know what? Is it possible that Bo Bichette leads the AL in hits or leads the league in hits again? It's a possibility. But I want to go with one of mine here because this is one that goes back to almost a year ago to date when we had Skyler Peters on for, I believe it was the first time. And he said that the Boston Red Sox were going to hit, how many wins was it? It was like 90 wins or something ridiculous. I'm going to say that the Boston Red Sox are going to win the AL East.
That's crazy.
I had to think about that for a long time. And you know what the thing that scared me about that was I thought they had a great offseason, maybe one of the best, in baseball. And we were saying the same thing about the Nashville Predators 6 months ago. And that was honestly the only reason why I did not go with the Sox to win the AL East. I'm sure we'll get into our division champion predictions in a bit, but I don't hate the pick. I just think everything's got to turn out the way that front office imagined.
Yeah, and you know what? When I was looking at that one, I just think they're the most solidly built team. When we look throughout the AL East, the Yankees are just in shambles with injuries right now. The Orioles have no starting pitching to an extent. The Blue Jays, I think, have the biggest question mark around them. The Rays are the Rays, and the Red Sox are just the most complete team, I think. But Carter, hot take, yours, give it to us, and then we'll keep going around the sort of loop here until we run out of them.
Yeah, that was a lot to take in. We had some World Series aspirations. We have Bo Bichette being better than Vlad, which I don't mind that at all. And then you have some Red Sox again hyping up for some reason, becoming a Red Sox podcast back-to-back years. We have a Skyler Peters pick last year. Braden throwing it out this year. Maybe we need a little bit more Jays talk. But for me, we always talk on the podcast about a young guy needing to step up. We need somebody throughout this team, probably a middle of the order bat and a younger guy to take that next step. Someone's got to have a Spencer Horwitz type year, and I'm thinking that out of all of our younger guys, I think it's going to be Alan Roden. I expect a massive year from Alan Roden. Has that Spencer Horwitz type year, comes up at some point in middle May and just does not stop running with it. Becomes a relatively full-time player. I'm thinking 110 weighted runs created plus, thinking it around 260, have a 750 to 775 OPS. We can get that from Alan Roden. I expect big things from this baseball team this upcoming season.
How many players had more than a 775 OPS on the Blue Jays last year? Was it one?
Horwitz got there as well.
Oh, did he? Okay. I was trying to think, obviously Vladdy was above 8. if Alan Roden's up there, man, we're having a great year. I love to see it.
Dallon, Wilton, back to you. Hot take number 2. What are you coming at us with?
Hot take number 2. I think Vladdy's going to get back to his power form, and he's going to hit 40 home runs for us. He's in a contract year, so he's got to show the Blue Jays and also every other team in the league if he makes it to free agency what he's got, and he deserves that bag. So I think he's going to hit 40 home runs.
Yeah, I think that might be a lukewarm take. I think that's a good one. A 40 is a lot to ask for, but I think he's got it in him too. A little conflicting, I guess, there between Dallon, Wilton, Skyler, Peters, with Bichette being better than 40 home run Vladimir Guerrero Jr. We'll have to see which one pays off.
Well, if both of those happen, then Dallon is probably right, and this team is going to the World Series. It's all good.
Hey, you asked for hot takes, and I delivered.
With Vlad, I mean, he has a 48 home run season. After that, it's 32, I think, maybe 30 even. So again, like 40 home runs. We haven't seen 40 home runs from Vlad since 2021. So if you can get something like that from Santander again, I don't think any of us expecting necessarily 40. Maybe some people are, but I think that's a good floor for him is 30. You get 30 from Vlad. Maybe you take a step from Varsho. You get Bichette finishing higher in MVP voting in Vlad, and then you've got again the bullpen taking steps. That's how this team is going to have success, especially when you have a team like in the AL East, when you have the Baltimore Orioles with their holes. I get it. The Yankees, the Boston Red Sox, still some juggernauts to go up against in this division.
Skyler, Peters, back to you.
Well, I got 2 more, and I guess they're kind of more lukewarm. If I had to pick the hotter one, I think I'm just with the situation right now in his thumb. I think Max Scherzer is going to pitch more than 85 innings for the Toronto Blue Jays this year. When he was on the mound, I thought the command was obviously top notch. That's what we've seen from his whole career. And the velo was pretty good for a freaking old guy. So I think he just needs to get this sorted out. Like maybe we're doing a spot start for the first 2 times through the rotation. Maybe we see that Y-Rod and Ryan Yarbrough kind of take up Scherzer's spot, and then he gets back in the rotation and really runs with it. I think the last 2 seasons for him have really, shown him what he needs to do with his body at this age. And I don't think we're going to see another 40-ish inning season from him again, like he's had the last 2 years.
Yeah, I think that's a good take. And it all comes down to health with Max Scherzer, and that's what it's been the past how many ever seasons. So when he's on, he's on. But it's just, can he stay healthy? That's a good one. I like that one too. Carter, I'm going to go with mine here before I send it right back to you for yours. Alejandro Kirk is an all-star this season.
Oh, jeez.
Alejandro Kirk.
I'm going to hammer the Jays to make the World Series right now because this is just like you got me thinking.
That's the worst thing I've ever heard.
Come on. No. Alejandro Kirk might be one of 2 most important players on the Toronto Blue Jays this season. If Alejandro Kirk and Daulton Varsho show up, that's when you can possibly start having the conversation of a playoff run. But the problem is, we've talked about it, this lineup has not all come together at once. Alejandro Kirk in spring training, hitting the ball hard, and probably the best we've seen Alejandro Kirk hit, maybe since, his big season where, he won a bunch of awards. It was awesome. But I think Alejandro Kirk might be one of the key factors here for this Toronto Blue Jays team being good. And that's why if I'm going to call this Toronto Blue Jays team a playoff team, I think Alejandro Kirk has to be all-star caliber.
Yeah, I mean, they're hot takes for a reason. Alejandro Kirk does have a very good season. I mean, that would lead to a lot of good things in the Jays. But I don't know. You got Adley Rutschman, you got Yainer Diaz, you got like Salvador Perez. There's a lot of good catchers. Cal Raleigh, obviously. A lot of good catchers in the AL. But again, if Alejandro Kirk, again, continue to play good defensively, have those framing rates up if he's throwing runners out, and then can have even an above average offensive season, there is a way that I can see that happening. But that, out of the podcast so far, for me, that's what is one of the hotter takes. But again, we're not coming in with the lukewarm takes here. We're coming in with the hot takes. So for me, I'm going to kind of continue on. I was in on this guy early on when he came to the Toronto Blue Jays around the time where the Davis Schneider hype was coming about, even a little bit earlier than that. But it's my boy, Ernie Clement, going to be the starting third base this year. He's getting himself a Gold Glove. He's going to be a regular guy out there. He already does play above average defense. He's getting the shot. Now he's playing regular games at third base. Alex Bregman, that whole situation in Boston, you're taking the ex-Gold Glove out. You got Rafael Devers maybe playing there. Maybe they figure it out and he does play there, but I got Ernie Clement winning Gold Glove this year.
I think when you look at the AL in general, I mean, there is some talent, but I think and I think I like the Gold Glove take for Ernie Clement more than like an all-star, silver, anything like that, because he was good defensively. I think the problem was was that he just didn't deliver as much offense as he wanted. He was a good bat, but it wasn't the pop, right, that you do see from Rafael Devers and all these guys. So I'm with that one. I could see it. I think he's going to be in voting again for sure.
Yeah, we've seen what he can do when he plays a long stretch of games. Like, so him being a starter this year, I think will really help him with his confidence batting and on the defensive side for sure.
Just before we continue, does anybody have any hot takes that they saved? Any really bold ones? Dal, I know you gave me a couple. I'll let you say your big last one. I think let's rattle them off. If you guys got any left, we'll just rattle them off sort of one by one. Dal, Skyler, then we'll go me and Carter.
Yeah. All right. Last one here. I got Jose Berrios winning the AL Cy Young.
Oh, God.
Oh, that is a hot one. Okay.
I mean, I like the start of his year last year. I liked his year in general last year, and I think he's only going to get better. He had that one down year the year before, but he pitches good in big moments, and I really like this guy on the mound for us.
I could see him as a finalist. I just don't think his stats pop off the page enough. Like, I think that's why Gausman is always, slotted higher in the betting odds for Cy Young when it comes to the Blue Jays starters. But I think he could be up there for sure. I don't know how hot this is. I'll judge by your reaction. But at some point this year, probably in late September, hopefully in October, also likely that it could be earlier, we're going to see George Springer's final game as a Toronto Blue Jay.
You're thinking like a Kiermaier situation.
I think that once you get to this next off season, it becomes pretty palatable for this team to consider moving on from George Springer.
And would you consider that? Are you talking trade? Or are you talking them just being like, hey,
the one thing that like maybe makes it hotter is like obviously the Blue Jays are pretty they hold these guys pretty close to the chest, and they hold him on right till the end. And obviously I think he's just on to 1 year left on his big deal at that point. But they hung on to him in the leadoff spot far too long last year. And I think that there's probably a threat of a DFA at some point in the off season or the late season, if there's some additions and this team's making a playoff run potentially, God forbid, that George Springer comes at the expense of that would really suck. Or they would explore trade options, with a team that feels like they're one piece away.
I think it'd be tough to trade him. Like the only thing you'd get is a bag of seeds at this point.
Well, but if you're DFAing them, you're just paying them money for nothing. So like, I think they'll explore trade options, but I think that like teams are going to kind of see through that, and the Jays won't have a ton of leverage in any potential trade situation. But I just think things are going to come to a head with George and the Blue Jays, later on this season or at the end of this year.
It's an interesting one for sure, because that's a situation with how poor his spring training's been. It's a situation I think that's on everybody's mind right now. And I think the leadoff question is completely off the table now.
Yeah.
If there's any talk of that, I mean, everybody go shut that down. If I see a Twitter post saying George Springer's going to lead off for this team, I might have to delete the app. I might become a Blue Sky guy.
We know how crazy Twitter is, and I haven't seen that once. I think that speaks to the level that George is currently playing the game at.
That's right. Carter, any last one for you that you have before I'll cap things off?
No, I just got one about Kevin Gausman. I don't think, based off the takes that we've heard on this podcast, I don't think this one's that hot either. But I just have Kevin Gausman 200K, sub 3.3 ERA. We get the kind of Kevin Gausman that we're accustomed to, especially the early on times in his tenure with the Toronto Blue Jays. But yeah, compared to the ones that we've heard, I don't think that one's nearly as hot as some of the other ones.
Yeah, and I'm sort of in the same boat with my last one too. But I think Bichette is a 2020 season. I think he grabs 20 bags and hits 20 home runs. I think if Bichette's at his best, and that's what we're hoping he is at, I think that's something you got. I think Bichette's going to hit 24, but I also think he will grab 20 bags just with how offensive minded they're looking to, at least in the spring training. Again, we'll see how that translates, but that's where I think we are with this team. When we come back, boys, we didn't get into our bets yet, and this is a big one. I want to talk about the bets. I know there's people that hate it. There is people that hate it, and that's fine. If you don't like betting, that's fine. It's a huge part of the sports world now that we all live in. If it's fantasy, if it's betting, if it's, I don't know. Goodness, I bet Carter $10 for a game of Mario Super Sluggers one day. Like, it happens in everything.
Who won?
That's enough of you, Peters. All right, we'll be right back after this short break.
The NCAA tournament is here, and so is the Bracket Breakdown.
Locked On Podcast Network and Amazon Fire TV channels are teaming up to deliver NCAA tournament coverage like never before. Watch studio shows featuring former players and Locked On's local experts as they guide you through every upset, buzzer beater, and bracket matchup.
Stream it all for free on Amazon Fire TV channel. Search Bracket Breakdown to see it all for free.
It's your team every day.
Yeah, I saw that. I was waiting. Dal's holding up, for those of you listening, a Mario Super Sluggers game disc because the guy's practicing on his off days of hockey. Anyway.
Hey, spring training.
That's right.
I love it.
Come on. We're going to have Peters down now for that comment. Now, when Peters comes back out here, we're ripping some Mario Super Sluggers before we hit the social. Boys, it's time for the bets, the 2025 betting segment. I want to get into it. This is something I've wanted to do for, I think, all of last year that we never really dove into. But I want to add it because I know Peters he's middle of his work day and he's throwing up bets on the MLB for the noon games. So what do you got for us today, Peters?
Well, I will preface this, and please play responsibly. If you are watching on YouTube, this is my record over the last month. So I'm just going to show you that. So take everything I say with a major grain of salt.
People like listening on us, like Spotify, Apple Music, like just
So
see what your record is.
In the last 30 days, I am down 33.98 units. I am 21-40 with a negative ROI of 26.8%. Not good. That said, one way to get that back at the end of the year is Bichette to walk out of here with the American League MVP trophy. 60-1 is criminally undervalued. And it goes back to everything I said before. If he stays on the field, he's definitely in this race, and the perceived value of that is much higher than it should be. Like, in a healthy season, I think he's been around 18-20-1 in the past. You're really buying low on Bo. I love that. And of course, Vlad with the big old bag of money coming from somebody at the end of this season, whether it's the Blue Jays or not, at 14-1. I think the fourth shortest odds is not a bad bet either.
And I want to get into one of mine. Again, Peters, don't hate that bet. I think at 60-1 odds, you're stupid not to throw a couple bucks down. This is one that I'm going to hit at some point because I just think it's criminally low. So I looked at the AL East to win the AL East, and the Yankees 2.4, Baltimore Orioles 3.6, Boston Red Sox at a 4-1 odd, Tampa Bay Rays are at 9-1 odds, and the Blue Jays are 12-1 odds, which to be the lowest in the AL East, below the Tampa Bay Rays. I don't know, man. I'm hitting that one just for the simple fact that it's 12-1 odds. I think I'm stupid not to.
I love bets like that because you could just, you throw $20 on it and you got an interest in every game the rest of the year. Whether or not you think it's actually that possible, that's something I could see myself doing too.
Going to Carter, Dallon, any thoughts or bets that you would like to place down?
I'm not a big futures guy. Like, I'm not a guy that's going to be like, oh, I think Bichette's going to finish here, or like Kevin Gausman's going to finish there. I'm more of like a in-game bet guy, but I also had to take advantage of the win total because it was absolutely ridiculous earlier on this offseason. It was at 76.5. If you were on that early, good for you, because I think that is an easy over for me. Now it's at 78.5. I still like the over. I don't think this team's going to win the AL East whatsoever, but like, from last year, like we won 74 games, we got swept by the Miami Marlins in the last series of the year. I think there is a bunch of ways that this team can get a whole lot better. Bichette obviously has been talked a lot about this podcast. You get some bounce back years from even just a few of the guys. Like, you got to get more than 78 wins. I think this team's probably going to win low 80s. We'll get into that for our next episode, but I think you have to hammer the over in that win total.
Yeah. Got it at 77.5 myself like a week and a half ago. I was actually surprised to hear. And now I just looked, it's actually juiced a little bit to the over. So that might even go up to maybe 79.5 by opening day.
Yeah. And you know what, as I'm looking through other teams, is the Red Sox, if I have them winning the AL East as my dark horse sort of hot take candidate, their win total is at 86.5. And so I guess you have to hammer that one too if you believe the Red Sox are in contention. So maybe you parlay those together. If possible, on whatever app you use. Hopefully you use, FanDuel, and you have that option, and maybe take advantage of those bonus bets as well. Maybe that's something you use for your $200 bonus bets. There you go. I love that. Dal, you got any for us?
Yeah, I was going to comment on the wins too, but I'll go with this. Peters is all in on Bichette. I'm all in on Vladdy. Like I said, contract year, I think he'll win AL MVP. So he wants to get a bag, and if you bet on Vladdy, you'll get a bag as well.
Okay.
And so the Jays should be selling it. That should be their slogan.
I love that.
You're betting on FanDuel this year. But
Are we also talking about the guy standing outside the stadium, like down in the alley? Is that added in there too, or what?
No. No,
Yeah, you're looking at bar or what?
no, I like it. I think he's going to have a really big year. So, he's coming off a hot year last year where he struggled early. I don't think we're going to see him struggle early. I think he's going to be, obviously he's not going to be consistent throughout the year, but he's going to have a better year than last year, I think, and he's going to win AL MVP. He doesn't got to compete with Shohei anymore. So,
Juan Soto's out too. So, I mean,
Yeah.
it's getting a little bit easier in the AL.
What other names did you guys see on that odds board for AL MVP? Because I got a couple here. I'm just interested in what kind of jumps out at you when you scroll down the list.
I know Gunnar will be one a lot of people are talking about. I think it's hard to ignore Bobby Witt. That'd be my guy. Like, you see what Bobby Witt did last year. That's going to be a guy that's on a lot of people's radars. Vladdy, obviously, a little bit more of, I could say, a dark horse, but probably going to be a top 5 guy there as well. Maybe Yordan Alvarez. The only issue is they're like predominantly a DH. It says you do enough. Those would be some of the names that I'd be thinking about if you're thinking about an AL MVP this upcoming season.
Judge.
Yeah, and just to quickly run down the top 5, because you named 3 of them there. Judge is the favorite. I think it was about plus 130. Just reset for me, but I know Witt was second at about plus 250, and then Gunnar was around 7-1. I think Vladdy was up next, and then it was Yordan Alvarez. I saw Jose Rodriguez at 20-1, and that intrigued me a little bit. I think the Mariners are in a very similar situation to the Blue Jays, where their fans are expecting a lot. He's obviously their best player, and I think more than maybe Vladdy or Bo have to do, he has to put the team on his back for the Mariners to have success this year. And then another guy I thought was Kyle Tucker at 26-1.
Yeah, all not bad. Peters, I know you are a guy that's locked into the bets. Do you have any more for us before we kick out of here for today's episode?
Yeah, I do actually. I have a few. I'll run through them quickly. Only Cy Young bet I think I'm going to make, other than the annual. I watch one rotation for the Blue Jays, and I just hammer the best looking pitcher. I've done that every year for the last 5 years. So Kevin Gausman's probably going to join this list, but I do have Cole Reagan's AL Cy Young 9-1. I think that's criminally undervalued. I think every time he stepped on the mound last year was just electric stuff, and obviously we expect big things moving forward from this KC team, and take another step. Astros to miss the playoffs plus 160. I thought that number was very intriguing. The Jose Altuve outfield experiment has looked like a disaster from afar. Can't say I've watched too many spring training games. And obviously the losses of Bregman are going to be tough there. And then the Mariners to make the playoffs in minus 105. I really like that. Just kind of going off the back of the Stros, maybe having a down year. They're going to maybe find their way in the AL West. Dodgers plus 230 to win 110 games or more, boys. Seems very doable. They're going to get to the 105 mark for sure. It's probably one like 11 or 12 game win streak away from doing that. And then I did write this down. It was the craziest bet I could find. The Angels to beat the Nationals in the World Series is plus, I can't even read this number. If you bet $1, it turns into $11,001. So
you'd be stupid not to throw it.
Worth a sprinkle.
Bet of the year, Skyler Peters.
Yeah.
You really had to get deep in your bag to pull that one out for the people here. If you see the Angels win, honestly, 70 games, I think that's probably a good bet.
That should be 1,000-1.
Yeah, they got Yusei now.
Hey, that's true. That's a free 6-7 games right there.
Yeah.
They got about 6-7 games of Mike Trout too, so that should be enough.
All right, boys. We got a lot more to talk about. Make sure you guys tune back in Monday where we talk the entirety of the league. We're going to talk standings. We're going to talk just the players in general and how they all break down. Make sure you guys come back for that one. Like I said, that'll be post-fantasy draft. Make sure you guys stay tuned. We'll get into some of that on Tuesday and Wednesday. Probably more so the Wednesday episode as we wrap up the Locked On Blue Jays Fantasy League draft and the Friends of Ours Fantasy Draft. We'll tell you guys where Blue Jays land and which guys are steals, which guys aren't, which guys fell, which guys are really important to team success. Thank you guys so much for watching. We hope you enjoyed this episode. We want to do it more often. It's fun snapping it around with the boys. We'll be back with you, all 4 of us, on Monday.